Shalom, Natalie. It's good to see you. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about the laws of the 3 weeks, of the 9 days, of Tisha B'Av, and as usual, I'm going to give you a small time of Chevruta in there. But I know we're learning halacha, but I thought I'd just start off with just something that you can take with you on a very you can give it over on Shabbos, on the Shabbos table. So what I'm going to share with you is just a few minutes about the structure of the Book of Lamentations, Eicha, that we say on Tisha B'Av. In synagogues around the world, we sit on the floor, and this year on Saturday night, we read the Book of Lamentations, of Eicha. According to our tradition, it was written by the prophet Yirmiyahu. He was in the time of the first temple, but they say that he had prophecy for the first and the second, and it's a very haunting work. And I advise everyone on Tisha B'Av, you have a lot of time, and it's a good. You can use your time well by reading that book. It won't take you so long. It's only 5 chapters. I'll share the screen here and just show you a very interesting thing about the way it's structured here. Okay. So I've printed it out here in Hebrew, and you can look in English, but you don't really need it in the English, because what I'm going to talk about is something that you can see in the Hebrew even if you don't know Hebrew. This is the book of Eicha. It's called Eicha because of the first word, Eicha Yeshva, how the city sat alone. So it's got 5 chapters. Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 5. Okay, so let's remember that, 5 chapters. How are the 5 chapters structured? The 5 chapters are structured very interestingly. If we look at the first chapter, it has 22 verses, and the verses follow the pattern of the Hebrew alphabet that has 22 letters. The first verse starts with Aleph, Eicha. The second one starts with a Bet, Bachol, then a Gimel, then Dalet. You will see that it's going down in the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. The second chapter again has 22 verses, and it starts with Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and goes all the way to the end of the Hebrew alphabet, Shin, Taf. The third chapter breaks the pattern, but in a very subtle way. The third chapter also goes Aleph, Bet, Gimel, but it goes Aleph, 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 3 verses of Aleph, then 3 verses of Bet, then 3 of Gimel, and so on till we reach our 66 verses, right? Because we have 22 letters times 3, and the end we have Taf, Taf, Taf. Then we have chapter 4, which again goes back to our Aleph, Bet, Gimel structure of 22 verses going from Aleph to Taf, from the first to the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And then in the end, chapter 5 breaks the pattern entirely. It does have 22 verses, but it's not in the order of the Hebrew alphabet. And it's not even one verse for each letter in a funny order, right? There are a few verses that begin with the same letters, right? We have like 1, 2, 3 that begin with an ayin. Not all the letters get a verse. It has 22 verses that aren't in any alphabetical order at all. Okay, so does everyone have that? Let's see if we can say that by heart. Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 4, Aleph, Bet, 1 verse for each. Chapter 3 is Aleph, Bet times 3. Aleph, 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 Bet, Bet, Bet. And chapter 5 is 22 verses, but no Aleph, Bet. Okay, we're good? This must mean something. There must be a reason for this. So, first of all, it's a format that's used in other places. Does anyone know where else we find Aleph Bet used in the Bible, in the Tanakh? No? Doesn't come to mind? Yes, Natalie?
The only example I can think of is from Tefillah, like Ashrei.
Yafeh ma'od. Ashrei, you answered more correctly than you think. It's true you know Ashrei from the Siddur, but Ashrei wasn't written for the Siddur. Ashrei is one from the book of Psalms.
Oh.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's from the book of Psalms and the book of Tehillim. And there in the book of Tehillim, we have Aleph Bet. There, if you look through the book of Tehillim, it's used several different places. In fact, there's one very long Tehillim where everyone has Aleph, 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 Bet, 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 Bet. It's a very long Tehillim. And the form of Aleph Bet is used quite often. Not quite often, but it's not uncommon. So we could just put it down to, well, they wanted to remember it or something like that, but there's probably a deeper meaning. So the explanation I want to give you is I learned in the work of the Maharal of Prague. The Maharal of Prague, the famous rabbi, famous for lots of things, but I'm going to tell you one of his Torahs. He says like this. He says, first of all, Aleph to Taf is like all-encompassing. I think we say in English, where I grew up, we said A to Z. I don't know what you say where you are from, but that was an expression that it meant like, oh, it's everything, the whole kit and caboodle, the whole of everything, right? A to Z. So Aleph to Taf, it encompasses everything. So he explains like this. He says, chapters 1, 2, and 4, did I do that on my fingers correctly? Chapters 1, 2, and 4, that each have Aleph to Taf one time, they represent the destruction of the first temple. According to our tradition, the first temple was because of 3 big sins of the Jewish people. Does anyone know what those 3 big sins of the Jewish people are? So we say the first temple was destroyed because the Jewish people worshipped idols, shed blood, and were sexually immoral. They're the 3 sins that a Jew has to die rather than do. Right? If someone puts a gun against your head and says, eat a ham sandwich, you say, oh, I've been waiting to do that for all my life. Don't shoot, pass the sandwich. Is there any salt? But if someone says, kill your neighbor or I'll kill you, or bow down to an idol or I'll kill you, or commit a sexual sin or I'll kill you, then you say, I need to call my rabbi. But the answer might very well be that you have to give your life rather than sin, right? So apparently the Jewish people in the destruction of the first temple did all 3 of those sins. And therefore, each one of those chapters, chapters 1, 2, and 4, get a whole Aleph to Taf, a complete destruction. When we worship idols, we break our relationship in the mitzvot between man and God. When we murder, we break our relationship between man and man. And sexual immorality, sexual sins, is very interesting. There's a bit of element of both. You're breaking God's will, you're hurting people, but more than anything, you're breaking your own sense of self, your own trust, your own faithfulness. It's a sin against oneself, a sin against man to himself. So those 3 big things, sinning against God, sinning against man, and sinning against oneself, cause the destruction of the first temple. Each one gets an Aleph to Taf, chapters 1, 2, and 4. I don't know why they're not 1, 2, and 3. I really don't have an answer for that. But I do know, says the Maharal, why chapter 3 is Aleph, 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 Bet, Bet, Bet. He says chapter 3 represents the destruction of the second temple. The second temple was destroyed, says the Gemara, because of baseless hatred, sinat chinam, because we hated each other. Says the Gemara, from here we learn that hating your fellow Jew is equal to the 3 big cardinal sins. If a temple was destroyed because of murder, idol worship, and sexual sins, and the second temple was destroyed because of hatred, therefore hatred must be equal to those 3 big sins. And that's why chapter 3 goes Aleph, 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 Bet, 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 Gimel, Gimel, Gimel. Because it's Aleph to Taf. It's the whole alphabet of sin when it comes to hating people. But it's equal to the 3 sins of the first temple. So it's this threefold Aleph Bet. We're good? So what about chapter 5? Chapter 5 has 22, so it must be equal to everything else. But there's no Aleph Bet. We have destruction of the first temple, destruction of the second temple. Says the Maharal. Chapter 5 is not because of the destruction of the temple. It's for something just as horrific. It's for going into the Galut. It's for being kicked out of our land and losing our country. Because when you have a country, even when everything's gone wrong, you still have some sense of order. So you don't like the government. In America, you wait 4 years, you can get a new one. In Israel, you don't like the government. You wait 4 months, you get a new one, right? But you still have a government. You just don't like what they're doing. There's still something going on, right? But when we leave our land and become the wandering Jews, then there's no order at all. There's no Aleph Bet. It's not a sin of Aleph Bet. There's just no order. And there's no order in Hebrew. We have this great Hebrew word for today, ladies. Balagan. Has everyone heard that Hebrew word? Balagan. Yeah, that I see everyone's nodding, right? So that's chapter 5. Diaspora, Galut, wandering Jew, Balagan. So now we know the 5. Now we know the 5 chapters. Now I'm going to show you something even stronger. Go back to chapter 1. And in chapter 1, you see that verses 16 and 17, Tet Zayin and Yud Zayin, 16 and 17 are good. They're in their order. You have a verse of Ayin, then you have a verse of Pei. That's the Hebrew alphabet. But when you go to chapter 2, you see that the verse 16 has Pei and verse 17 has Ayin. Something's wrong. The Ayin and the Pei have been swapped around. And in chapter 3, the same thing happens. We have 3 verses of Pei, and then we have 3 verses of Ayin. But in the Hebrew alphabet, we should have first 3 verses of the letter Ayin, and then 3 verses of Pei. And so too in chapter 4, we also have the wrong order. We have Pei, and then Ayin, rather than Ayin, then Pei. Let's summarize again. Chapter 1 has the Hebrew alphabet like it should. But all the other chapters, 2, 3, and 4, the Ayin and the Pei, or rather the Pei and the Ayin, are swapped. They're in the wrong order. What's going on? Why is that? Wow. So there's a Gemara that talks about it. And I'll tell you the truth is I remember the Gemara, but I didn't know exactly what page it was on. So I Googled it. And I got to these articles. Shalom, doctor, it's good to see you. So I got to these articles that talked about why is the Ayin and the Pei in the wrong order in the book of Eicha. And the academic answers are just wild. One academic answer is they made a mistake. There was a copy mistake. They made the scribal error. So then you think to yourself, so how come in the first one they got it right? And then they made the same error in 2, 3, and 4. Like, it's weird. So that's not a very good answer. Then they give another answer. Once upon a time, the Hebrew alphabet was different. It had Ayin before Pei. So what happened in the first chapter? And why is every other place in the Bible does have the right order? Like, they're not good answers. But the Talmud has a really good answer. The Talmud says that it comes to talk about the very first Tisha B'Av. The very first Tisha B'Av takes us back to the spies. We're in the desert. We've got the Torah. We're about to go into Israel. Moshe Rabbeinu sends 12 spies to spy out the land. 2 good ones, Yeshua and Caleb. 10 bad ones. They come back, they give their report. The day they give their report is Tisha B'Av. The 2 good spies, Yeshua and Caleb, say, we can do it. And the other 10 say, nah. Do you see how big these grapes are? Well, the people are even bigger. We're like grasshoppers. There's no way. We can't do it. So all the people go and cry in their tents. And God says, oh, you're crying? I'll give you something to cry about. And Tisha B'Av turns into a day of mourning. It could have been Yom Ha'atzmaut, could have been Israel's Independence Day, right? If the spies had said, yes, it's really good, and everyone said, let's do it, so Moshe Rabbeinu kind of would like frizzed up his hair and said, we declare the founding of the state of Israel today. And they would have just like gone in like with Herzl and Ben Gurion, and they would have just founded the state of Israel, would have just been fantastic. But no. So what was the sin of the spies? So the Gemara says that they sinned by putting their mouth before their eyes. They were supposed to go through the whole month of Tammuz and the beginning of the month of Av and look at the land, see what it's like, get an impression, and then come back on Tisha B'Av and based on what they saw, give a report. But they had preconceived ideas. They actually wanted to stay in the desert. It was really good for them. They were the leaders. They were on a high spiritual level. They had the man. Everything was great for them. They didn't want to go. So they already knew before they left what they were going to say. And that affected what they saw. Hebrew letter for your eye is, I can see Charlene saying it, is the letter Ayin. Hebrew letter for your mouth is Pei. Peh. The Hebrew alphabet is designed that you're supposed to, let's go back and look on the chart. The Hebrew alphabet is designed in such a way that you're supposed to have your ayin, like in the first chapter, before your peh. You're supposed to look. And once you look, based on the reality you see, you're supposed to give your report. But the spies, patsu alecha pihem, they open their mouth. The verse is really talking about the nations of the world are enemies opening their mouth against the Jewish people. But the Gemara says that it refers also to the spies opening their mouth against God. They put their mouth before their eyes. And that was the sin. And that's what the prophet Yirmiyahu is hinting at. He puts the first chapter in the right order to say, this is what you're supposed to do. And then he says, and this is the reason for Tisha B'Av.
What was he saying that was against God?
They opened their mouth against God. That's right. They said, God can't take us in. He promised the land, but he made a mistake. So what we have here is in the book of Eicha, just in the mere structure of its 5 chapters and the alphabetical order of the letters and the turning around of the 2 letters, we have here a whole lesson about Tisha B'Av. We have destruction of the first temple, the second temple. It tells us that hatred is equal. It's a 3-fold sin equal to the other 3. We have the concept of going into exile, and we have the root of Tisha B'Av in the sin of the spies that comes to tell us that we should really judge without preconceived ideas. We should learn how to look, and through that we can learn how to talk. That's an idea that I thought I'd share with you, ladies. You can give that over on Shabbos. And when you're sitting in shul listening, I hope that will help you with your Tisha B'Av. Yes. Good. Now we're going to learn halacha. I hope that was okay. I stole some of our time, but we're going to learn halacha. I'm going to send you off into Chevuta. So let me just stop the recording for a bit. Shalom uvracha. So I was told that was not enough time. That's really good.
No.
Very good. So I tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to go and try and make this a very practical halachic session by using a text. We're using this text, the concise code of Jewish law, the laws of the 3 weeks. Okay, let me just tell you a little bit about the text that we're going to use as the basis for our study. The concise code of Jewish law is called in Hebrew the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the concise code of Jewish law. As opposed to the Shulchan Aruch, which was written by Rav Yosef Cairo in the 1500s, the concise code of Jewish law was written by a rabbi called Rav Shlomo Gansfried much later in history, in the 1800s. We have photographs of him. He was a great rabbi. He was Hungarian, and it is the most printed, most sold, and most learnt book of Jewish law ever. Pretty cool. You do pretty good to have that many versions, and the thing, it's translated into millions of different languages. And my guess is that it's somewhere on the shelf behind that. But that just might be her wedding albums. But if it could very well be, it's somewhere in your bookshelves, the concise code of Jewish law. There are all different types of prints of it with all different types of commentaries. What's really good about it is it's one volume with less pages than Harry Potter that a person can just read, and they can get everything from waking up in the morning till going to sleep at night, from weekdays to Shabbos to Yom Tov, from birth to bat mitzvah to weddings to 120 years old in one volume. What's bad about the book? What's bad about it is that any book that's going to cover everything very concisely is going to leave things out. And you can really only do it by being quite strict. So, for example, if I want to tell you how to build a sukkah, I'll say, put up 4 walls. Well, that's not really true. For a sukkah, you only need 2 walls and a little bit, but you have to know where to put the little bit and how to build it. But if I just tell you build 4 walls, then it's much easier. So to be concise, he has to leave things out and also be not particular. Secondly, he doesn't actually bring you background to things. So you have no idea, like he says there, we eat apple and honey on Rosh Hashanah. And he says, and we don't eat pigs. Well, there's a bit of a difference between those 2 laws, right? I got a phone call once from one of my students. She said, Rabbi, how much apple and honey do I need to eat on Rosh Hashanah night? I said, why are you asking? She said, because I really don't like apples. So I had to tell her that it was only a custom and that it was really okay. If you don't like apple and honey, you can don't actually have to eat it. But, if everything else is equal, then we eat it. But, eating matzah on Passover night, that's not up for like, oh, I don't really like matzah, right? So if you just read his book, you wouldn't get those fine differentiations. More than that, he was a great Hungarian Jew. He was from Hungary, and the Hungarian Jews are known for being really strict. Yeah, they keep Judaism. They love being strict. It's Ashkenazim in general like being strict more than the Sephardim, and the Hungarian Jews, they like being strict even more than the German Jews. Right? It's like in their nature. So he's got a lot of strictures. So we're going to use his book. Nonetheless, it's a great book. I advise everyone to buy it and read it, and it's really good. But you should read it with a pencil. And every time he says something that you don't see as normative in your community, you should put a little question mark and go and speak to a rabbi, right? Go and speak to someone learned, right? Everything. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to learn it with a question mark, and I'm going to fill in the blanks. Now, as we go through this, I gave you another piece of paper. I gave you an outline piece of paper, which has got the dates and times for, well, we already had the 17th of Tammuz, but the times for Tisha B'Av here in Jerusalem, and a whole list of subjects that we're going to talk about. So as I go through the subjects in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, in the concise code of Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, you can take those notes on our on this piece of paper if you've printed it out, and take notes so you can just follow along. Okay, so let's read. I'm reading from the Concise Code of Jewish Law, chapter 122, law number 1. Since the 17th of Tammuz marks the beginning of the anguish of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, why does it remark that, what you read the Rambam, why, open up your microphones, ladies, why does the 17th of Tammuz marked the beginning of the anguish of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple. What happened on the 17th of Tammuz? Look back in the Rambam. Do you remember? Eileen.
The tablets were broken.
Great.
In the first temple, the offering of the daily sacrifices was nullified. The walls of Jerusalem were breached.
Oh, that's the one we want. The walls
Okay,
of
that's
Jerusalem
the
were
one.
breached. I imagine that many of you have come to Jerusalem and you walked from the Jaffa Gate down to the Kotel. And that probably took you about 10 minutes, maybe 45 minutes if you were looking at everything they were selling in the marketplace. But it doesn't take long. It took them 3 weeks from breaking those walls to getting to destroy the temple. Like, imagine that's intensive fighting for 3 weeks. So the beginning of the anguish for the destruction of the temple starts on the 17th of Tammuz, when the walls of Jerusalem were broken. And that's called Bein HaMetzarim, between the straits, or otherwise known as the 3 weeks. So we go back to our text. It is customary to observe partial mourning from that day until after Tisha B'Av. So on the sheet that I gave you here, I wrote trips and excursions. During the 3 weeks, because we're observing partial mourning, most Jews try and limit really exciting trips, certainly dangerous trips, and big excursions. Now, until the beginning of the month of Av, from a technical point of view, you can go on trips. When the beginning of Av comes in, then we've got to limit our happiness, as we're going to see. But things that are dangerous, we start limiting already from the beginning of the 3 weeks. So therefore, you'll hear people talking about during the 3 weeks. When I was very young, during the 3 weeks, a lot of people didn't travel on airplanes. Now they just grounded all air travel because of the virus, and that kind of stopped everything anyway. But today, people are less concerned with that because air travel is a bigger part of world thing, and many people travel during the 3 weeks. But you can still hear of people who during the 3 weeks won't travel on airplanes. And certainly, it's not time to organize your trip to Disneyland during that time. But because it's school holidays, they have lots of camps during this time. So doing things like going camping and stuff, you can actually speak to your rabbi. We continue on. It is proper for every God-fearing person to recite Tikkun Chatzot, a special midnight order, daily in the afternoon. So this saying Tikkun Chatzot is not very prevalent, certainly not in the Ashkenazi community. Some people in the Sephardi community do it, but most Ashkenazim, if you went to your local rabbi and even asked him, where can I get a copy of Tikkun Chatzot, he'd probably be hard pushed to find a copy for you. It's not printed in 99% of our Siddurim. I say the Sephardim are more, and the Kabbalists are more in tune with it, but most Jews in the world today do not say Tikkun Chatzot, not during the year and not during the 3 weeks. You can stop me if you know that this is not correct and your synagogue says midnight mass every day during the 3 weeks, but right, no one stopped me, right? Has anyone ever seen Tikkun Chatzot? That's right. So don't worry about it. Let's go on. Here we go. Okay. Next. No weddings are performed, even for a person who has not yet fulfilled the mitzvah of Pri or Revu, be fruitful and multiply and have children. Can't get married in the 3 weeks. Sorry, Charlene. But engagement parties, even with a meal, are permitted until Rosh Chodesh. Although it is permissible to make engagements after Rosh Chodesh, nevertheless it is forbidden to serve a meal at the engagement party, but it is permitted to serve desserts and other delicacies. Okay, so you can't get married during the 3 weeks, but you can get engaged. Until the beginning of Av, you can have an engagement party. And from the beginning of Av, the time we're in now, during the 9 days, you can have a small engagement party, but not sitting down having a catered meal, but like having like cakes and drinks and stuff like that. You can even get engaged on Tisha B'Av itself. Yes? No? No one's doing that. You can do that. You can engage. The reason why we're allowed to get engaged in this time is because we're worried that if you push it off, someone else will hup your prospective partner and you might miss out. That's what it says in Halacha. So don't miss out. I told all my students, I said, I want to see you engaged. But so far, no one called me with the news. We continue. So that was on our list too, weddings and engagements. A Jew who makes his living as a professional musician is permitted to play in the house of a non-Jew until Rosh Chodesh Av. But from Rosh Chodesh until after Tisha B'Av, he's forbidden to play. And then he talks about on the fast days itself. Okay. So, music. We don't listen to music or play music during the 3 weeks. If you're a professional musician, we learned that you can play for a non-Jew at least until Rosh Chodesh Av. Based on this, latter-day rabbis in our generation say that someone who's taking music lessons and they're paying for music lessons or they're learning professionally can probably still go to their music lessons and practice at least until Rosh Chodesh Av. And if you're really just practicing, just having a lesson, then there's even in extreme circumstances something to talk about during this 9 days. I once had a student who was a professional cellist. She was in the Philharmonic Orchestra. So I said, she asked me about practicing during the 3 weeks. I said, what would be if you didn't practice your cello for 3 weeks? She looked at me and she said, Rabbi, what would be if you didn't learn Torah for 3 weeks? I said, oh, I don't think I could cope with that, right? That's like a fish out of water. I couldn't do that. So I said, she said, even not playing for the whole of Shabbos is difficult for her because she needs the muscles of it. Like she's on that level of thing. So someone really like that, I said she could do exercises or just like finger exercise and stuff during the 9 days and practice in private if you're really that type of level of professional. But otherwise, if you're just taking piano lessons or guitar lessons, you should put it aside, certainly during the 9 days. Now, what about listening to, if you're playing for pleasure, we don't play for the whole 3 weeks. Now, what about listening to recorded music? So this is obviously something that didn't exist in the time of the Shulchan Aruch. It didn't exist when the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch was written. So there are all types of opinions about this. Some people permit any recorded music. Some people forbid every recorded music. Some people allow just vocal recorded music. Some people allow just sad recorded music. Some people allow only sad religious recorded music. Can anyone open their microphone and tell me what they do in their community? We're listening to recorded music during the 3 weeks or the 9 days. Paula?
There are different opinions. Definitely not with instrument. A cappella has become very popular.
Right.
Even like in the stores, like you go into the Jewish stores, you'll hear a cappella music.
Right. In my personal opinion, when you have a cappella music that is so professional and sounds like a 5-piece band behind them and you can't tell the difference, I don't know what they're gaining with that. If you have 2 little kids from Mea Sharim screaming out Tehillim, that's so painful. That's probably in the spirit of the days. Listen to that. But so that's with music there.
Okay, yeah.
Let's continue. Some people have the custom not to eat meat nor drink wine from the 17th of Tammuz until after Tisha B'Av, except for Shabbat, or the meal is considered a mitzvah. That is not our custom. Our custom is to refrain from meat and wine, as we're going to see later, only from the beginning of Av. Okay? Some people are accustomed for 3 weeks, but that is not the custom today. People eat meat until Rosh Chodesh Av. Okay, number 2. It is customary not to say the bracha Shechianu during these days. Why not? Because Shechianu says we thank God for bringing us to these days, and we're not actually happy that he brought us to these days. Therefore, you should not buy or put on a new garment, since that would make it necessary for you to say the blessing Shechianu. But on the occasion of a pidyon ben, shechianu must be said. In Israel, we say shechianu to brit milah also. So we don't postpone the mitzvah. Concerning new fruit, we are lenient and say shechianu on Shabbos, or even on a weekday if the fruit won't be available after Tisha B'Av. So let's go through shechianu. During the 3 weeks, we don't say shechianu. The Vilna Gaon, he wasn't so sure about that, and he thought we could say it. Normative Jewish practice today does not say shechianu for the whole 3 weeks, except for Shabbos. On Shabbos, people say shechianu. So, up until Rosh Chodesh Av, you're actually allowed to go shopping. But it's a question of what you can go shopping for. Because if you go shopping for something that's going to require you to say shechianu, then you've got a problem. So my friend asked me if you could buy a new bicycle at the end of the month of Tammuz, before the 9 days, during the 3 weeks. I said, yes, but you've got a problem. You would normally say shechianu. He said, can I wait till Shabbat to say shechianu? I said, you're not allowed to ride a bicycle on Shabbat. We only say the blessing when we're wearing the new clothes or when we're using the object. So you put off buying the bicycle. If you're going to have a big loss or something like that, so you could buy it. Rav Feinstein talks about someone who needs a new truck for his work. Maybe you could buy it if he's still happy after the 9 days, says shechianu then. But we don't say shechianu. Now, sometimes you can't avoid saying shechianu. Like I said, in Israel, we say shechianu to brit milah. So if you're going to have a brit, my son's brit was actually on Tisha B'Av. So we said shechianu on Tisha B'Av. I didn't send him back into his mother's tummy and say, could you come out later? Well, what are you going to do? If you have a new fruit, you can leave it till Shabbos, and nearly everyone says shechianu on Shabbos. If you have a fruit that you can't keep until Shabbos and you're going to miss out, then some people say you can eat it during the week and say shechianu. Today, with our refrigeration, I don't think you're ever going to miss out on a fruit. So I think you can always leave it till Shabbos. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if you had a fruit that you couldn't keep till Shabbos to say shechianu. Questions about shechianu?
Yes, in today's world, my understanding is it's very rare for a new piece of clothing that we would be saying shechianu.
Okay, so let's go over which type of clothing do we say shechianu. Now, I've got to admit that in many religious circles, we don't say shechianu so often. I've seen many religious people who don't say shechianu. And I ask myself, why is that? So there are 2 reasons. One is, we're not so happy. Why? You buy new socks. Who's happy buying new socks? I still have a recollection of staying at my grandmother's house and her darning my socks. She had this big thing that looked like a wooden mushroom, and she put the thing and she took thread and darned socks. I can see someone going like this. Who darns socks today? I doubt whether anyone in the world does it. You throw them out. You buy 3 for 10 shekels in the shuk, right? No one darns it. People don't. Nothing is made to last, and we buy new clothes or even shirts. Like, does anyone? I remember the old rabbi of the shul near here, and he had a very nice long rabbi's coat, and it actually had a patch on the elbow, like just on one elbow. It wasn't like like a groovy patch. It was like a patch, like because it was a hole and he made a patch. So can you imagine your rabbi coming into shul with a coat with a patch on it, right? I don't think the board would stand for that, right? So today we buy new clothes so often that maybe we're not happy with them. The second reason is because we are less connected to God, and we don't think of turning to God and saying thank you when we buy new clothes. I in my personal life try to find a middle ground. When I buy new things that bring me a lot of joy and that are quite that are not common things to buy. I buy a new suit once a decade, maybe even longer, maybe once every decade and a half. I think I bought 2 suits in my life. So I say shechianu on a suit. And a few years ago, Eileen told me that she finally, when her husband retired, she got air conditioning. Yes? So when we got air conditioning in our house, I asked my wife to say Shechianu. When we bought a new couch, which I built myself from IKEA, we said Shechianu. The truth of the matter is that when it's for more than one person, you don't say Shechianu. You say Hatov v'Meitiv, which is Shechianu in the plural. So when we bought a car, we said Hatov v'Meitiv. And that you can actually say in the 3 weeks, because it's only Shechianu that's problematic, which says, thank you for bringing me to this time. But Hatov Meitiv is that God does good and is good and does good. And that's Shechianu for the plural. When I once bought my wife a piece of jewelry, and I think she said Shechianu on that. Another time I bought her jewelry, and she said she doesn't say Shechianu on jewelry that costs less than 50 shekels a piece. Yes, Paula.
I also had understood the value, like your wife is saying, but today's world, well, there are two parts of this. Today's world, you can buy clothes very, very easily. And it's not like there's any, it's not like buying a fur coat that, it has that worth to it.
I don't want to say it, Paula, but that was very politically incorrect. But we understood what you were saying. Yeah.
Okay.
A new Strimal. A new Strimal.
I don't do a Strimal. So besides all that, isn't there also something about if, you're going to be able to buy something new, that it's going to cost a lot less if you buy it during the 3 weeks.
We'll get to that in a minute. But at the moment, we're just sticking with Shechianu. So let's summarize Shechianu. In general, I've noticed religious people don't say Shechianu. Has anyone here ever said who said Shechianu on new purchases? Wow, ladies, I give you a blessing. You should all merit to get something new and say Shechianu on it. But it should be something like really nice. Like when you buy, do any of you own your houses? You didn't say Shechianu on your house? Wow.
You're still paying the mortgage.
That's
still paying the mortgage.
A car? Do people buy cars, bicycles?
Nope.
When I bought my new bicycle, I said Shechianu. Wow, I was really happy on that.
Right, can I ask a question about this?
Yes.
So once so the question is purchase, right? So you brought up a house, a car, whatever have you. So if you made a purchase, so theoretically it's yours, but you haven't paid it because you're paying mortgage or you're financing your car. Are you allowed to even say Shechianu at that time or no?
Yeah, I'm not a economist, but as I understand it, you actually, when you buy a house, the house is yours. It's just that you then took out a big loan to pay for the house, and that you indenture yourself as an indentured slave for the next 30 years to pay it off. And the bank says, and if you don't pay us, then we're going to take the house as payment. But the house is actually 100% yours. From the time you pay, you actually own the house. And so, yes, I believe you should say Shechianu when you buy a house. If you're more than one person in the house, it's for you and your good husband, then you should say Hatov v'Meitiv. I say it, like I said, on new furniture. I can understand why some people don't say it on clothes. I know people who wear suits to work. Probably, right, if you're a lawyer, if you're a person who's wearing a suit or fancy clothing, you're an important person. You probably do buy clothes at a regular time. I see that people... I had 2 daughters who got married within the same year, and I was told that my wife needed a different dress for each wedding, and I was shocked. I said the dress you had for the first one, you bought a new dress. I didn't understand why you needed a new dress. She needed a new dress for the first one. I said you can wear the second one. I said that we can use the same photographs, but no. You had to get a new dress. So a dress for a wedding, at least based on how much it costs, I think deserved a Shechianu. And she did say Shechianu on it. Yes, she said a Shechianu on the dress. Okay, so during the 3 weeks, we're going to try not to do a Shechianu blessing. Okay, but if it turns up and you say it, then you have on who to rely, especially the
just to pipe in, it just strikes me that, you know, as an overriding value, you know, keeping gratitude in your life, you know, for all these things is a good thing, right?
Yes,
To
I
take
believe
a
that
moment.
too. A person does have to be careful to that like Paul is pointing out, a person who says Shechianu, I'm buying a new pair of socks, so there's something wrong there. The Gemara actually says a person who says the Hallel prayer every day, it's actually belittling God, right? Because did you ladies say Shechianu, or did you say a blessing on when your children were born? Do any of you have children? Did you say a blessing when your children were born? Oh, you have to do it all again. You have to do it all again. When you have a boy, you say a tov v'meitiv, and when you have a girl, you say shechianu. And I follow the practice of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal, who is a great rabbi here in Jerusalem. I'm merited to learn from his books and meet in person. Whenever I have a new grandchild, I organize to say those blessings through a different way. Like if I buy something new, or I have special wine and something like that, a special way so that I can say those blessings too. The rabbis didn't institute a blessing to say Shechianu or Tov Meitiv for your grandchildren, but I've got to thank Hashem for your grandkids. When your grandkids are born, so then I always organize a way to say those blessings. I go and buy something special. I organize some special way to do that. And that just like what Anne's telling us, that sense of having to turn to Hashem. But we can turn to Hashem without a blessing, right? You can always say Tehillim, or you can use your own words. Just the blessing has to be said according to halacha. Okay, we move ahead. Yes, Marina.
Wait, why Tov Matif for a boy and Shechianu for a girl?
Not our subject tonight. Great question, but not our subject.
Okay, fine.
We move ahead. Okay, teachers should not strike students, and parents should not strike their children during these days. We shouldn't do things that are dangerous. Of course, from this you can use your Gemara logic and say during the 3 weeks you shouldn't strike your students, and during the 3 weeks you shouldn't strike your children. So what does this tell us about the rest of the year?
Davka, you shouldn't strike your children at all.
So I should tell you that in the time of the Gemara, and the time this was halacha was written, it was socially acceptable and even psychologically thought it was beneficial to strike your children. Today, I'm not a child educator. I mean, I do educate people, but I understand that today, psychologically, educationally, and parental-wise, that's the wrong thing to do. So, someone who is a child striker, you should go and speak to your local rabbi, because it's not a good thing to do. But especially during the 3 weeks, it's actually forbidden. We continue. It is the custom not to have a haircut during these days, neither the hair of the head nor of the beard or any part of the body. Adults are forbidden to give their children a haircut. Okay, so for the whole 3 weeks, we don't do haircuts. 3 weeks, we don't do haircuts. We don't trim our beards. There could be some exceptions to this. First of all, someone who works amongst the non-Jews or has a really big need to shave for their appearance, then you should speak to the rabbi. There might be room to be lenient about that, especially towards Shabbat. The 9 days were stricter. The Sfardim are much more lenient than the Ashkenazim on this. And that gives the Ashkenazim, in times of need, to rely on the opinions of the Sfardim. There's a question about whether women are obligated in this law also. Maybe the law is more lenient for women. And certainly until the 9 days, a woman who really needs a haircut and didn't get one, there's some room to talk about. They talk about that a woman who normally cuts her hair so that she can cover it, or when she's going to the mikvah, there were communities of women who cut their hair very short before they went to the mikvah. So, and they should find out local practice there also. Plucking eyebrows is permitted. They're not considered haircuts, women who pluck their eyebrows. You had another question, Charlene?
I thought that in the Orthodox Jew they cannot. Is there an exception to cut the beard for men?
Ah, yes. Not during the 3 weeks. During the whole year.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Like
During the whole
during
year.
the whole year.
During the whole year, the Torah tells us that we can't put a razor to the corners of our face. There's a bit of an argument about where the corners are. And that's why when I was growing up, there were classic rabbis who had like a goatee, but they would shave this part because they said that wasn't the corners of their face. In Jewish history, there were many men who used to use a cream to remove their hair, like some women use on their legs. They put a cream and then rub and their hair would fall out. And in the modern era, many rabbis permit using an electric shaving device because they say that's like using scissors. Everyone says you can use scissors. They say electric shaving device is like scissors. According to the Kabbalistic approach, they let their beard grow. So if we say, what's the letter of the law? Jew is certain, if you hold by the Kabbalah, you just let it grow. If you don't hold by the Kabbalah, which is not an obligation, you don't have to be Kabbalistic, then you can use scissors. And you can't use a razor on the corner. Where is the corner? It's a good question. People today, many Orthodox rabbis and Orthodox Jews, especially in America and Europe, use electric shaving devices. And that nearly across the board, that's accepted. The reason why you see so many Jews with learned Jews with beards is just because we're lazy. It takes too long to shave. And also because when we're learning, we like to have something to pull on. Do you know how it is? It's also a social thing. Everyone else has beards. I noticed in America that many Orthodox Jews there from all across the board are clean shaven. Yes, I went and davened once in a synagogue, in an ultra-Orthodox synagogue in Passaic, and that's where you're living, Paula, and very nice. And I was trying to figure out why that synagogue felt different, and I put my finger on it. At the end, it felt different because even though all these men were wearing jackets and hats, and they were all clean shaven, all of them, and that's accepted. But during the 3 weeks, they'll now grow a bit of stubble. If you walk the streets of Passaic today, you can see all these men with they look like terrorists, right? They've got like this little Middle Eastern thing there. Yes. But the ones you see who are clean shaven now, they've spoken to the rabbis. Of course, they work in Congress or they're on television or they've got something and they're obligated to shave. And then you can speak to your rabbi and there's something to talk about. And so to a woman, there's what to talk about if a woman needs to shave, certainly up until the 9 days. Okay, we continue. It seems to me that it's permissible to trim the mustache until the week which Tisha B'Av occurs, if it interferes with your eating, but during the week which Tisha B'Av occurs, it should be forbidden. Cutting the nails is forbidden only during the week of Tisha B'Av. This year, the week of Tisha B'Av doesn't exist because Tisha B'Av is on Saturday night. But if Tisha B'Av was on a Tuesday or Wednesday, then from Saturday, from Shabbos onwards, you shouldn't do it until then. But for a woman to go to the mikvah, she can cut her nails at any time. Also, a moil, somebody does a circumcision, sometimes they need a long nail. Okay. On the 3 Shabboses, between the 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, with 3 haftarot of retribution. They are Divrei Yirmiyahu, Shimul Divrei Hashem, and Chazon Yishayahu. That's this week is Shabbat Chazon, it's called. Okay? So this you'll see in the Chumash which ones they read. Let's go to number 7. When the month of Av arrives, these are the days we're in right now, we should restrict such activities as happiness. You should not build a building meant for enjoyment or strictly for relaxation. If you made a contract with a non-Jew to have your house painted, and you can persuade him for a small compensation to wait until after Tisha B'Av, that would be the right thing to do. But if you cannot be persuaded, you may have the work done. So to do house improvements during the 9 days is not a good idea. To have your house painted now is not a good idea. If you can at all avoid that, you should not do that. Next, if a Jew has a lawsuit against a non-Jew, you should try and postpone it until after Tisha B'Av, because it's an unlucky period. I don't like the word unlucky. I don't think in the original Hebrew used that. It's not auspicious period. If possible, you should postpone it until the end of the month, or at least until after Tisha B'Av. And we don't sanctify the new moon till after Tisha B'Av. There's once a month, Jewish men in the evening when they see the new moon, that is after the moon starts renewing from the 3rd day of the month. Some people start after the 7th day, until the middle of the month when the moon starts getting small. There's a prayer to say when you see the new moon. Jewish men generally say this on a Saturday night. So normally we would have said it maybe on the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, if that would have been on the 4th or the 5th or the 6th of the month, or the 7th or the 8th. But the custom is to wait until after Tisha B'Av. Number 8. It's the accepted custom in all of Israel not to eat meat or drink wine during the 9 days, from Rosh Chodesh until after Tisha B'Av. It is forbidden to eat food that was cooked with meat or contains animal fat. Even chicken is forbidden. However, a person who is sensitive to dairy foods is permitted to eat chicken, and for a sick person, all restrictions are limited. Nevertheless, if it's not too difficult to him, he should abstain from eating any kind of meat from the 7th of Av onwards. Also, some women who are given birth abstain from meat and wine from the 7th of Av onwards, for on that day the heathens entered the Beit HaMikdash. At a meal that is considered a mitzvah, such as a brit, a pidyon haben, or the conclusion of a Talmudic tractate, it is permitted to eat meat and drink wine. And then he talks about who can come to this party. Aside from your parents, brothers, and children, and those involved in the mitzvah, you may also have 10 friends. But only friends who, if the meal would have been held at any other time, would have joined you. All these mitzvah meals are permitted even on Erev Tisha B'Av before noon, but not later than that. The festive meal that is usually made on the night before a bris, the Sfardim have a meal then, is not considered a festive meal, a mitzvah meal. It is forbidden to have meat and wine at such meals. Rather, you should serve dairy food. Regarding the cup of wine for Havdalah on Shabbos night, so then we give it to a child to drink the cup. Otherwise, the person making Havdalah may drink it. So let's talk about meat and wine. So let's start by saying that you're allowed to have meat and wine on Shabbos. You're allowed to have meat and wine at a mitzvah meal. But apart from Shabbos and a mitzvah meal, a person should not have wine nor eat meat from Rosh Chodesh until after Tisha B'Av. The Ashkenazi custom is not to have it from the beginning of Av until noon, halfway through the day of the 10th. That is this year only on Monday around 12 o'clock do we start eating meat. During that time period, the Sephardi custom, they eat it on Rosh Chodesh, but they don't eat it the whole day of the 10th. Okay, so 2 different customs. You can have fish. Chicken is a bit less than red meat, because red meat was offered as offerings in the temple, but chicken was never offered. So a person who really needs meat for health reasons or whatever, they should go for chicken first. When we say wine, we mean grape products of wine and grape juice. But you're allowed to have beer or whiskey or vodka. For a mitzvah meal, you can also have wine and meat. So if you have a brit during this time period, or if you have a pidyon haben. And the third category is if you have a party for finishing learning a whole tractate of Gemara. It's called in Hebrew a siyum. And there's a bit of discussion about whether you can organize to have a siyum during that period, but there are many people who do organize to have such a thing. I know that the Chabad Lubavitch community has a practice. They think it's a great mitzvah to finish tractates during this period. And nearly every day in the Chabad world, they'll have a siyum, and they're eating meat every night. Paula, you know that custom? Yeah. It's pretty much only by the Chabad Hasidim, I think. I never heard it by anyone else. There was a meat restaurant in Jerusalem many years ago that advertised, it was called the Steakhouse, and they advertised a mitzvah meal for finishing a tractate every evening, 7 o'clock. The community invited, pay according to the regular prices. And they had a yeshiva boy every night. He would finish a tractate of Gemara, and then everyone would eat meat there. I don't know about that one, but they did it. They actually did it. Paula?
Well, no, I mean, in general, I've heard of not just Lubavitch, but it's sort of like, this loophole to be able to eat meat. So I'm gonna make sure I finish. I time it so that I can say.
So there are three different levels of this. There's people whose learning actually finishes then.
Right.
There's people who it's almost finishing. They speed up a bit or slow down a bit. And then there's people who, like, during the course of the year, they learn like Gemara all the time. So they just keep like a whole lot of last pages up their sleeve. That's really bad. That one is not correct.
Okay.
On the other hand, encouraging people to learn Torah, hey, I'm for it. Why not? Why not? Now, the question is, does it have to be Gemara? So the answer is no, it doesn't have to be Gemara. If a person learned anything in depth, not just read, but learned. So if you wanted to learn the whole book of Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, with like a simple commentary, even like what's printed in the Art Scroll Siddur, if you learned the whole of Pirkei Avot with that, that's quite an effort to learn that. That would be several hours. And then you could have meat tomorrow or tonight, whenever. Do a siyum. You could invite 10 guests if you wanted, and you could read the last Mishnah and explain it, and then you could have some meat and wine. But for most people, it's better to refrain. Unless you're a Chabad Chassid, then there's some spiritual thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're good? My son, the one who had his Brit Milah on Tisha B'Av, so obviously he had his Bar Mitzvah on the 2nd of Av. Yes? And in my community, for the Bar Mitzvahs, they're very good with Bar Mitzvahs. They do, it's very low key. And he had all his class over to our house, and he finished learning a whole tractate, of course, and he gave a long speech, and the rabbi gave a speech, and I gave a speech. But anyway, he was vegetarian. He's vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. Our house is vegetarian. It's only milchik. And his friends were just appalled. There it was already the 2nd of Av, and there was a bar mitzvah and a siyum, and they all came to the house, and they were wearing white shirts, and they're all ready. And there was like spaghetti with cheese. It was like really upsetting to them. It was they never forgave him for that. Anyway, what can we do? What do we do for Havdalah?
Yeah.
So the Sfardim are very easy. The Sfardim say Havdalah, that's the end of Shabbos. So just like you can have wine on Shabbos for Kiddush, you can have wine for Havdalah. But the Ashkenazim say Havdalah, no, that's the beginning of the week. Can't have wine during the week. So what do? So ideally, you have a child who's old enough to understand about Havdalah, but not old enough to understand about mourning. That is, they're about 6 years old, but they're not yet like 10. They're somewhere between 6 and 10. This is why ultra-Orthodox families continually have children, so that they will always have someone to drink the Havdalah wine on Saturday night. What do you do if you don't have a child of that age? So the halachot is that you can make it on wine and drink it. But the practice is not like that. The practice is to make Havdalah over an important drink that's not wine, like beer. In fact, in my house last Saturday night, even though I had my grandchildren here, but the oldest one who was here was only 2. The older ones, with my son, they didn't come for this Shabbos. So the 2-year-old, she doesn't understand anything, so it's not going to help. So I asked them to make a coffee. Coffee is an important drink, but coffee is too hot. You need to drink like a whole mouthful. So I said, make an iced coffee. So they made an iced coffee, and I don't like coffee. I just took a little bit, but then my daughter drank a whole mouthful of it. There's this thing, the women don't drink the Havdalah wine because they might grow a beard. Have you heard that story? It's a Bobbermeister. It's not true. But I let her drink the iced cafe, and maybe she get a moustache. I don't know. Anyway, so she drank that. That's what most people do. What did they do in your house last Saturday night? Did you make Havdalah on wine? Who made Havdalah on wine last Saturday night? No one. Yes, Natalie. So you're in good hands. You don't have a 6 to 10-year-old there, right? Am I correct? So you made it. You did exactly what it says in the halacha. Who made it on something that wasn't wine? Who had Havdalah on something else? Who doesn't remember what they had Havdalah on? You don't remember. Okay. So in many households, they would have made it on beer. We continue. That's with Havdalah.
Rabbi,
I'm listening.
so how do we make Havdalah this?
Oh, so this Shabbos is Erev Tisha B'Av, and on Saturday night is Tisha B'Av. So you can't make Havdalah because no one can drink the wine. So what do we do this Saturday night? So as soon as Shabbos, you have to finish eating. We don't have a last meal normally before Tisha B'Av. We have a last meal where we have like bread and a hard-boiled egg, and we sit on the ground and eat it before the fast comes in. So this year we don't have that because you're not allowed to mourn on Shabbos. So we're going to have a normal Suda Shlishit. Not only is it going to be normal, the Halacha calls it like a meal like King Solomon at the height of his reign. You can have a wonderful Suda Shlishit. I advise you to have watermelon and to drink a lot of grape juice and to fill yourself up because those things get into the body and they give you a lot of energy. You have to make sure you stop eating and drinking by sunset. Not the time it says on your calendar when Shabbos is out, but before that, when the sun drops below the horizon. That'll be written on your calendar as the time called Shkia, Shkiat HaChama, right? You have to finish eating by Shkia HaChama. In Jerusalem this week, it's like about 10 to 8, even though Shabbos doesn't go out to like 8:14 or 8:15, right? So it's at Shkia, you have to stop. Then, when Shabbos goes out, you say the words Baruch Hamavdu Ben Kodesh L'chol. You say the phrase, just like I said it now, blessed are you God who distinguishes between Shabbos and the profane. At that point, you can now do labor. You then get up, you change into Tisha B'Av clothing. Preferably, you should put on the clothing that you wore on Friday. Don't put it in the laundry basket. Keep it there and put back on the clothing, the skirt and the shirt you wore on Friday, your weekday clothing that's already been soiled. Then most of us will go to shul. In shul, after they pray Mariv, but before they read the book of Lamentations, before the book of Eicha, they will hold up 2 candles and they'll put them together. Usually we don't use the special Havdalah candle. Usually they'll take 2 normal candles and put them together. If they use the Havdalah candle, it's not the end of the world. And they'll say the blessing on that, Borei Morei Ha'esh. If for some reason you cannot see that from the women's section, or it's too far away for you to get benefit from that light, or you didn't get to shul, then at some point in the evening, you should take 2 candles or 2 matches and put them together and say the blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Borei Morei Ha'esh, and benefit from the light. Okay, so at some point on Saturday night, you say Borei Morei Ha'esh. You're not going to say this Saturday night, we're going to miss out the blessing on spices. That's that one we're going to miss. When are we going to say Havdalah on a cup of wine? Well, we can't do that on the fast. We're going to do that on Sunday evening before we eat and drink. On Sunday evening at the end of the fast, your husband, or if there's no man there, a woman can do it herself, picks up a cup of wine or grape juice. Some people say that you shouldn't use wine or grape juice, but my rabbi taught me like the Mishnah Berurah says, that you should use wine and grape juice on this Sunday evening. You should pick up a cup of wine or grape juice and say the blessing. You don't say the first verses. You don't say those introductory verses. You just say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam borei pri hagofen. And then you say the blessing of Havdalah. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol ben or l'chol ben yisalam. The paragraph of Havdalah and borei pri hagofen. And then you drink a mouthful of the wine. Before you hear Havdalah, you're allowed to drink water, but you should not eat food until you've heard Havdalah. So a person needs to break the fast on Sunday. Someone who is not allowed to fast, or someone who gets sick, they should make Havdalah before they partake of food. If they only need to drink water, then you don't need to make Havdalah. And on Sunday night, you can drink water before you make Havdalah. But for eating or drinking other things, you certainly need to hear Havdalah. If you're making Havdalah over a cup on Tisha B'Av itself, it'd be better not to use wine. It'd be better to use an important drink like beer or iced coffee. Or if you need to, you could probably do it on grape juice, which is better than actual wine. Is that good, Paula?
Thank you very, very much.
A real pleasure.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Let's continue on here. You should not wash any laundry during the 9 days, not even a shirt or a garment that you will not wear until after the fast. It is forbidden to have it even washed by a non-Jewish washerwoman. A Jewish woman who washes clothes of a non-Jew, they talk about doing those things. So you can't do laundry. Not only that, during these 9 days, forbidden to put on laundered clothing or to spread linen, even if they were washed before. And then he talks about what you do on Shabbos. However, on a Shabbos, you may put on clean garments and undershirts and spread a fresh tablecloth on the table and change the washcloth and towels, just you do like other Shabbos. But it's forbidden to spread clean sheets. Okay, let me go a little bit about laundry and clean clothing during the 9 days. From the letter of the law, according to the Gemara, the laws of clean clothing and stuff are really only in the week that Tisha B'Av falls. And that's what the Sparling are accustomed to. So this year the Sparling don't have that law at all. But the Ashkenazim was stricter, and we brought that law back from the beginning of Av. According to the basic Ashkenazi custom, from the beginning of Av until after Tisha B'Av, a person didn't change their clothes. Comes along the Vilna Gaon and says, no, you can't mourn on Shabbos publicly. So he changed the custom and said, on Shabbos, you can put on clean clothes on Shabbos. So based on that, a person this whole week should be not changing their clothing. Needless to say that in modern times with our level of hygiene, this is unacceptable for us. A person who doesn't change their socks and their undergarments and their clothes for 9 days will find themselves either with various medical conditions or suffering socially very much. You'll find that everyone is moving away from you there. You can't just do that. So nearly all the rabbis in the world today say that garments we wear just for sweat, to collect the sweat, underpants, undershirts, undergarments, things that we wear against our skin, socks, tights, things we wear to collect sweat, those you can change, and you can wear clean ones. However, there are many garments we wear that we don't wash them every time we wear them. For example, many people will wear a skirt several times. You wear a sweater many times. You probably wear your kisui rosh many times. I wear a jacket. Some people, if you wear undershirts, you might even wear an overshirt once, twice, or 3 times before you wash it. Trousers. Those type of clothes, people say that you should not wear clean ones during the 9 days. Even that starts getting a bit difficult in the modern world where we're used to like changing our shirts every day, even if we're wearing undershirts on them. So people do several things. Some people prepare those clothing in advance. That is, before Rosh Chodesh Av, they'll wear the shirt for half an hour, then put it back in the cupboard, and then they'll have a whole series of shirts to wear during the 9 days. Other people take the clean clothes out and they put them on the ground and dirty them up a little bit before they wear them during the 9 days. Some people, I imagine, rely on what the Sephardim rule, which is it's only during the week of Tisha B'Av, and therefore they're more lenient, especially as freshly laundered clothing doesn't mean as much to us as it used to in those days. But halachically, a person should prepare the clothing. But the types of clothing that a person is used to changing every day probably doesn't come under this law. Question, Paula.
When you say freshly laundered, you could have something sitting in your closet for 3-4 weeks.
That's considered freshly laundered. Means something that hasn't been worn since it came out of the washing. So let me say again, the practice today is to wear completely new laundered clothing for Shabbos. The practice today is to change clothes that one wears for sweat, underwear, undergarments, to change those on a daily basis and put on freshly clean socks. When it comes to garments that a person would wear for several days, like a suit or trousers or skirts, people try and either prepare them beforehand or put them on the ground before they wear them. Questions? We're good? Okay. Little babies' clothes you can wash, like diapers and little children's clothes, you can wash them all the time. 10. During these 9 days, you shouldn't have new garments, nor new shoes or socks knitted, even by non-Jewish garments. So you can't buy new clothes during the 9 days, nor make new clothes during the 9 days. So when we said during the 3 weeks, the problem with saying Shechianu, during the 9 days, it's actually making or purchasing new clothes. 11. Women have a custom not to arrange the threads for weaving during the 9 days, because the warp is called in Hebrew the sheti, and the destruction of the Even Ashtiyah within the Beit HaMikdash, it's a play on words. The foundation stone of the universe is in the center of the temple. The foundation stone is called the Even Shtiyah. The words for the warp and the woof of a cloth sounds like that in Hebrew. So therefore, many women don't sew or knit during the 9 days. Okay. We continue. Bathing. I'm going to say this one outside, because if I read it inside, you'll be so upset. According to the Gemara, according to the practice of the Ashkenazim, they didn't wash for 9 days. Again, when it came to washing in honor of Shabbos, people were a bit more lenient. Maybe they washed their hair, maybe they washed in cold water. But in our day and age, the idea of not washing for a whole week, even if you're going to wash for Shabbos, that's not going to, that it's a non-starter, right? None of us cannot wash for a whole week. Though in not so distant past, even the practice, my wife's family is from England. I don't think that daily bathing in England 50 years ago was widely practiced. But in the modern era, in our houses, in our lifetime, we're people who bathe and wash ourselves every day. Certainly in summertime, we're people who wash ourselves every day. So what are the limitations? Today, most people during the 9 days do wash their bodies on a regular basis, on a daily basis. What do? They don't wash for pleasure. That is, they don't have a bubble bath with the rubber duck, or stand in the shower and sing all the songs from the First World War. They have a shower that is what we call in Hebrew chik-chak. How do we say that in English? Chik-chak? zip zap.
Abbreviated.
What?
Abbreviated.
Abbreviated, as quick as you can. And some of them do it in cold to lukewarm water. Some people do it by standing outside the stream of water and just doing limb by limb. But the main thing is that it shouldn't be bathing for pleasure. So to turn the jacuzzi on, to go and enjoy a swim in the beach or in the pool, that's not acceptable. But to wash for hygienic reasons, to get rid of sweat, to get rid of bad smells, to be healthy, that you can do. I noticed a really interesting thing, that the time I normally spend bathing in the shower, only about 10% of that time is actually washing. The other 90% is just enjoying the feeling of the nice hot water running over you. What? Could you go like this, ladies, with your heads? Yes, you agree with that? Yes. So during the 9 days, we don't do that 90%. We just do the 10%, just the washing part, right? Go in, have a shower, come out. It could be that washing. Rav Henkin's grandfather, bless him memory, one of the great rabbis in America, he said there's this concept in the Gemara called an istinist. An istinist is someone who has a psychological condition that they're crazy about cleanliness. He said in his day, in the 1950s in America, 1960s in America, he said all Americans are istinists. They've all got this psychological mental condition that they're all crazy for cleanliness. I think that's even more true today, right? I can't even imagine, right? None of us can even imagine going for a week without showering. But we should limit only for cleanliness and not for pleasure. We continue. Okay. Then he talks about washing on Erev Shabbos. He talks about washing if you're a mourner. We're going to skip. Then Law 15 talks about a brit during the 9 days. We're going to skip that one too. Putting on new clothes for Shabbos. The custom today is to do that. The custom on Shabbos Chazon is to use a special chant, a different tune for much of the Torah reading. In my community, they have a special tune for Halachot. Do they do that in your synagogues? They have a special tune for Halachot, and they have a special tune for reading of the Torah. Okay, we've covered the 9 days. Now what I want to do is go very quickly through Tisha B'Av itself. Okay? Let's go through Tisha B'Av itself. On Tisha B'Av, there are several things that are forbidden. The things that are forbidden on Tisha B'Av are 5 things. Eating and drinking is one of them. Bathing is another one. Applying oils is another one. Wearing shoes and having marital relations. There are 5 big prohibitions for Tisha B'Av, which we're going to go through very quickly. And then there are 4 customs of prohibitions that we do, which are learning Torah, greeting people, working, and sitting on a chair. So let's go through the 5 big prohibitions. The 5 prohibitions: eating and drinking. It's forbidden on Tisha B'Av to eat and drink. Who's exempted from this? So exempted from this is someone who, even if it's not life-threatening, someone who's just sick. There's no fast for someone who's sick. What's the definition of someone who's sick? Someone who's sick is someone whose whole body hurts or has to lie down. Now, all of us have to lie down, even just on a regular Tuesday afternoon in the middle of summer. Of course, we just want to lie down. But we're doing about someone who, if fasting makes you so weak, or you feel so nauseous, or you're so that you're out of commission, then there's no fast for you. You should have stopped fasting already. And if you know you're going to reach that stage, then you shouldn't fast. The Shulchan Aruch writes that pregnant and nursing women fast. In the world today, if you're pregnant or nursing or very old, then you should speak, or you have a medical condition, you should speak to your rabbi beforehand and get a ruling. Okay? Because especially in Israel where it's very hot, especially in our generations where people aren't so strong. Any one of those people, if you're pregnant, nursing, very old, or have a medical condition, you should speak to a rabbi personally and get a ruling. In general, we say that nursing and pregnant women should fast, but there's a lot of room for talking about that, okay? When we say it's forbidden to eat and drink, that does not include pills, medicines, maybe taking tablets, that's permitted. It's probably even permitted on Tisha B'Av to wash them down with just a tiny little bit of water if you can't swallow them in any other way. Yom Kippur is a bit stricter. But taking medicine, bitter medicine that doesn't have nice taste to it, that's not considered breaking the fast. So a person who needs to take like a Tylenol, you can take a Tylenol aspirin. You can take that. Paula.
I use an inhaler, and but I'm also supposed to rinse out my mouth afterwards.
If you need to rinse out your mouth because of that, if you need to rinse out your mouth because of that, you should keep your mouth facing downwards. You should use a very small, just like a little shot glass worth. Rinse it out with your mouth facing downwards and then spit it out.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Great. A pleasure. I was going to take a moment to say goodbye to Anne, who has to leave. And it's our last class, but I look forward to seeing you next time and maybe even during the year.
Thank you so much, and sorry for interrupting everyone.
It's a real pleasure. Okay, bathing on Tisha B'Av. You certainly can't take a shower or a bath. You're allowed to wash to get rid of dirt. So if a person gets dirty, they get a cut and the blood's coming down, they can wash the dirt off, but only the place where the dirt is. In the morning, we wash our fingers just up to the knuckles. That is just the fingers, not the palms of the hands. And after the bathroom, we also wash only the fingers. But obviously, if you went to the bathroom, or you changed a baby's nappy or something like that, and you need to wash for hygienic reasons, you can wash for hygienic reasons, especially in these days of the virus, and you need to wash for hygienic reasons, you can wash for hygienic reasons. But other than that, you wash. So just to wash your face in the morning, you can't do that. If your eyes are all gunky and you can't get the gunk out, so then you can wet your finger a little bit and take the gunk out, because we said you can wash to remove dirt. You can't wash just for anything else. So we normally wash our faces in the morning. You can't just do that. Yeah, you can't have a shower, you can't have a bath. Okay. Applying oils. You can't apply any oils or creams for pleasure, but for medicinal reasons you can. So if you've got an infection, or you've got mosquito cream, or you've got a bite, you can put that on. You've got cracked lips, you can put that on. But just to put creams and liquids like makeups on, you can't do. It's a bit of an argument about deodorants. To put perfume on, you can't do, but some people say that you can put on deodorants because just to mask a bad smell. So it's more like cleanliness. You can certainly have all this stuff on from before the fast, right? So if you have it on from before, it can stay on you. So you put deodorant on Shabbos, it can certainly stay on you for that time. Okay, wearing shoes. We're not allowed to wear leather shoes, even if they've only got just a little bit of leather on them, right? So if it's just got like a little leather lacing or something, you can't wear them. Non-leather shoes can be worn. There are some rabbis who say that if it's really comfortable non-leather shoes, you shouldn't wear them, because they understand that it means that not only you should not wear leather, you shouldn't wear something that's like a full shoe. You should wear something that's like a slipper or a Crocs or something like that. But from the letter of the law, most rabbis say that you can wear shoes, like tennis shoes or something like that, as long as they have no leather in them. But there are some people who are strict, and they say you should wear non-leather things that don't give you the support of like a full shoe, or like a slipper. Marital relations, a person, there are only 2 nights a year when the mikveh is closed. One is Yom Kippur and one is Tisha B'Av. So if it's night for the mikveh, you have to push it off one more night. Can't go to the mikveh. And a woman can't have relations with her husband. A husband can't have relations with his wife. Not only that, certainly during the evening of Tisha B'Av, we act like we do during the period of the month when we're in Nida. So we don't sleep in the same bed as each other. We have no physical contact on the night of Tisha B'Av. From the letter of the law, in the day of Tisha B'Av, a person can have non-romantic, they can sleep in the same bed and touch each other, but some people are strict even in the daytime not to do that. So at sunrise again, a person can't go to the mikveh, they can't have intimate relations, and during the night of Tisha B'Av certainly, and some people follow it through in the day also, they have to act like they do during the time of the month when they're forbidden to each other, and like in the days of Nida. Okay, so that was the 5 big ones. Now let's go to 4 small ones. Learning Torah. There are restrictions on learning Torah. You can't learning Torah gives us such pleasure. You can't learn anything that gives you pleasure on Tisha B'Av. So the only learning we do is things that are really depressing. You can learn the laws of mourning. You can learn the book of Lamentations. You can learn the book of Job. You can learn the parts of the Gemara that talk about the destruction. So all depressive learning you can do. Yeah. Today they have on the internet unending amounts of Torah classes for Tisha B'Av. The Hovetz Chaim Heritage Foundation, all that, right? They broadcast. Have any of you seen any of those classes? Often they're giving talks about Musa, about improving our character traits, and that is permitted. You're allowed to talk Musa on Tisha B'Av. Next, greeting people. You shouldn't greet people. You're not allowed to say shalom. You shouldn't say good morning. When you answer the phone, it's better just to say yes. Now, if someone greets you because they don't know the law, you're allowed to like give a little greeting back so as you don't insult anyone. So if you're walking out of your building and your non-Jewish neighbor or your non-religious neighbor says to you, "Hey, great morning, top of the day," so you can say, "Morning," right? You can give some subdued message, but we try not to greet people on Tisha B'Av. Sitting in a chair, our custom is that at least until midday on Tisha B'Av, we don't sit in a chair. The very righteous sit straight on the ground. Some people just sit on a cushion. Some people sit in low chairs, they're like chairs that like mourners sit in. Someone who has health problems, like back problems, or they're very old, so they can sit in a chair if they really need to. When you go to sleep at night, when you lie in your bed, the very righteous sleep on a mattress on the floor, and the really righteous put a stone under their head. I never met anyone who did that, but it's written in the books. Many people try and make themselves a little bit more uncomfortable when they're going to sleep. If they normally sleep with 2 pillows, they sleep with 1. But from the letter of the law, you can lie in your bed on Tisha B'Av. Yes. If you're traveling in a car or a bus or something like that, you can sit in a chair. After midday on Tisha B'Av, then we sit in regular chairs. And the last thing is working on Tisha B'Av. A person should try to avoid working on Tisha B'Av, especially if it's something that's going to take their mind off the morning. And if you have to do work, it's better to do it in the afternoon. So, for example, to prepare dinner, let's say you have to go shopping to prepare food so you got what to eat after the fast. So it's better to do all that, the cooking and the shopping, in the afternoon. But a person who can avoid it should not organize to do their weekly shopping on Tisha B'Av. Yes? But some people have jobs. If you've got a job, you need to do work. But then you should try and do it in the afternoon if you can. If you really need to, if it's work for the community, or you really need to, there's no other choice. There are only a certain number of days you can take off work, so then you go to work. What can you do? It's not forbidden to work. In Tisha B'Av, as much as possible, a person should try not to remove their mind from the morning. So a person who spends Tisha B'Av playing Monopoly, something's wrong. Baruch Hashem today. So if you spend all of Tisha B'Av just reading like, I don't know, reading Agatha Christie books, there's something wrong. Baruch Hashem, like I said, today on the internet, there's unending material, videos, classes, articles, things that are really appropriate Tisha B'Av learning. I myself usually spend some time on Tisha B'Av reading about the Holocaust. That is, for me, one of the strongest connections we have to the morning, because it's something that we can all relate to. So that is something, a good use of your time. I organized in my local synagogue that from the fast here in Israel goes out very late at night, 8 o'clock in the evening, after 8 in the evening. So I organized that from 4 in the afternoon, we have speakers speaking. One speaks all the time about the Holocaust. One always speaks about Jews from the Soviet Union. One speaks about anti-Semitism through the ages. We have 5 or 6 different speakers on the day of Tisha B'Av. And that's a good use of it. Any of you in your synagogues or your communities, you have like days of learning or something like that? You have something in the shul going on Tisha B'Av?
Well, because of the pandemic, so it's become more online. But yeah, the Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation has.
Yeah, the Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation has great things in English, and they have like non-thing. And I think the OU has whole days of learning. I think you can find that online if you go to the OU site. And there are many different things that you can spend the day doing.
I also understand Nishmat is having something.
Yes, I understand there's something for us that we're doing something together. I don't know if I'll be able to do it because, like I said, I'm responsible for this talks in synagogue. So I have to be there to make sure that runs well. So I might not get to see you then, but I think that we're doing something together here online also. Ladies, I enjoyed so much as a person can enjoy Tisha B'Av, but I enjoyed our classes together that we had over the last 2 weeks. And I invite you. Short Sipor will send out information. We have learning for the whole year. And I would like to personally invite you to, please God, we should all merit to get on airplanes and come and see me face to face in the Beit Midrash in Nishmat. And we can sit and learn Torah together in Yerushalayim, because that's what I really like doing. We should all be blessed.
Amen.
The Beit Mikdash, only peace and good for everyone. Shalom uvracha.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.